Hey folks, welcome to another video on some of the stuff of Worldographer, some of the features. I'm Joe Wetzel, the creator of the program. What you see in front of you is a map that is set up to be traced. This is one of the ones that Dyson Logos has done. He has a number of commercially usable maps on his website, and so I encourage you to check that out. We've been working with Dyson for a long time on all sorts of projects, and for our purposes we need a simple little dungeon map, and so I liked this one, but I want to do like a color version of it. So what I did to get started so far was I went up to the file menu and I said, okay, new battle mat dungeon map, and I picked a size of I think 20 wide and 16 high, which is a little bit bigger than what we need, but we can adjust that later. And so here I then went to the trace underlay drawer and I clicked this button, which is a select file button before you pick one. Then the file name does show up once you've selected it. But so you pick one, you position it, so you set it up. This was just some trial and error. I knew that it was about 20 squares across or so, and so I ended up being 19.8 gives me pretty much lines up our grid, which is the thin line that you can see kind of down here in this area where my pointer is, roughly lines up with the thicker gray line that Dyson had on his map. And then likewise we have 11.6 here for the height, and then we also have to shift the upper corner, and I shifted it back a little bit because this doesn't really matter too much to me right here, although I could add another column and kind of widen this out if I want to. And then I shifted down a little bit here in this case. So with that out of the way, let's get on to our drawing, and we're going to do this primarily with shapes. So what I like to do is I first like to, and I should point, before I get onto that, one other thing. The opacity setting I set to 50% here, so that you can kind of see the map and you can kind of see what we're going to be making, or what we're making is going to be on top. And we'll obscure that, but not completely obscure it. All right, so shapes. What I want to do is I want to make a polygon, and I want to get I don't want any border actually on it at all. We're going to do the border separately. And we go into texture and we pick a texture. And here, this is just what you think makes a good looking floor pattern. So I'm going to go for this light gray flagstone thing. I'm also going to keep snap points to grid on, and that will also snap 1/4 of the way across and 1/2 the way across and 3/4 of the way across, but for our purposes that should be good. So I'm going to go and click there, click here, click here, click here. Now you're seeing, of course, the map is, you're seeing the grayed in area right here in the wall area, because as we extend this, you'll see it will get set up properly or correctly. So it's just just a few clicks depending on, and how exact do I want this to be to what Dyson had created. In fact, I know that I'm going to be making a few changes to the map where I want something a little bit different than what he had designed, but what he did gets me 90% of the way there. I do want to have like this one back entrance. I'm calling that other entrance the main entrance, and then I'm going to say that this way here leads to whatever this, maybe some loot, something stashed off in the kind of a runaway tunnel is the way I'm thinking about this. Dyson does a good job of giving you some lore on what he was thinking for a lot of the maps that he creates, although I don't think he did that for these, because he was making kind of several at once. But usually he gives you some lore about what he's thinking when he creates them. In this case, we're just gonna come up with our own lore for it, and that's something that I'm doing in the near future. So in our case, I'm just going to make this like a little alcove back here. I'm not going to let that go all the way to another exit, if you will. But I do like having one extra kind of side exit type thing going on. So we'll do that. So then once I've got this room done over here, then it's a matter of doing the walls for it. One more point down there. So to do the walls, I'm going to deselect the current thing that's selected. We're going to go to line here. And then here, we don't care about the fill, so there's no fill, but we do want to have, I find that currently I'm thinking a wall thickness of like about 15% is pretty good. And I typically use this rock dark color for my texture of the wall. Then we got some other settings here that we can do with how things change for the line, but we'll leave that for the moment. Let me just, so now I'm just kind of tracing over those, picking those same points that we used before, and you know, like I said, really just tracing over it, picking which ones to accentuate. And that's the one wall there. Now I'm going to actually go back to trace underlay while I still have that selected. And I'm going to go to 100% just so we can see what did we do. I'll zoom in, I'll scroll wheel in a little bit here. And so this has this rounded thing, and that's what I was expecting based on what's set here. I don't want that. I want to have a bevel connection kind of thing. So you could also go with the miter for that. But for my purposes, I would like the bevel in this case. So we've got that. Let me zoom back out some. Let's set the opacity back down to, say, for the sake of argument, 60% here. A little bit more than what we had before, but not by much. Shapes. Let's go back and do the other wall for this. So deselect the current line and do the next one. Now the settings that we had just made in that prior one are kept, so we're able to, you know, that miter selection is still going to, or that bevel selection rather, is still going to be set for this shape here. And it's just a, you know, a few clicks gets me this whole corridor and room complex. And you know, you can be as exact as you want or not with it. So that's our back exit there. Now for these other, well, let's see. Yeah, first I want to come across here. We're going to do this doorway here. We're going to put a line across, and then we'll bring in the door icon as well. But now that that's done, we can do a thinner line for showing that raised, kind of the raised platform, if you will. Maybe I'll do like 7%, maybe about half that thickness. And we come across here like this. Deselect, and then I can do a Control D to deselect, as well as going over to the side there and clicking that deselect button over there. But as you're going, it's just a little bit easier to just do Control D. Okay, so now we got that. We've got this little curve thing going on here, so deselect, let's go arc polygon. Again, no fill, because the fill, well, actually we can do a different fill. Let's do, let's make that platform there a little bit nicer looking, this deluxe tile thing going on there. Give it that line, that 7% thick line, and we will, see if I just click here roughly in the center of where I want the circle to be, and then kind of the outer border of it. We get this. I can drag that point in a little bit, and or do we want something that's sticking out too far? I think I like that best. I mean, it's not an exact match, but that's close, roughly what it is. We want it to only be half a circle, so we change that to 180, and then we have to change where does it start, and of course I picked the wrong side, so that we switch that to 270. So it starts at 270 degrees, and it goes 180 degrees around the circle, and and we want to give it that tile fill. And I want to push this down, because right now you don't see it so well with the way that the trace underlay is set. But let's see if we set this to 80%. Yeah, so you can see that that's above, and so I want that to be below, so I just push it down, but I don't want to push it down below everything. Push it up one, so now it's above the flagstone gray pattern, but below the wall, and that's what I want. So now I'm going to do another polygon, because what I want to have is I'm going to do a fill this time of the rock dark as well. And we'll set this to 15% like the outer wall was, because we're just putting in this large column, if you will, that's here. And oh, actually helps if I set that. All right, so now we've got that. So now we've got some room features to add. We've got several stairs at the very least, and you know, it depends on how detailed you want to get. You know, do you want to put some things in for each little box that Dyson has identified there, or do you just want to focus on a couple of the bigger things? Like we've got this statue. Let's rotate them. Let's override the default scale so it's not quite as big as what we had there. As the default size of the statue. We've got one there, and then flip it to 270 degrees for the rotation, put the other one there. Then we also need stairs. So we grab a staircase. Here's our stone staircase, and we can do, but we only want it to be half the length. And so we can play with this though. We don't want to override the default scale. We do want to do that. Well, maybe we do want to override the default scale, but only slightly, so 95%. So it's just not quite the full length. And, you know, this is, sometimes it's hard to tell from the graphic which way is top and which way is bottom. So if I go with this, I know that it's, so now it's at 0 degrees. And so that, you can kind of see that there's a little bit of a darker edge on the bottom there. So I'm going to know then that the bottom is there. So I think that's right. The other way to check this is to switch the graphic set. You can switch the graphic set to the simple style, and that gives you something more like this. And so now I do know that, and so for all the built-in graphics in Worldographer, or almost all of them, there's a couple of exceptions where it doesn't make sense just because the graphic is so small. But you can switch to this in order to see what's the right way to place all of these. And we definitely don't need that. We need that at 0. Let's switch our graphics back to the realistic style, and we don't need this to be so big. 25%, can we do that? Yeah, that's kind of good. So 45%. So we'll go with something like that. I'm going to let it go place freely so I can don't have to anchor it to the quarter point and halfway point across a square. But it gets me a little bit closer to what Dyson had done. Then one other thing is the door. We can have any type of door we want. This is a big stone door. And I don't want place freely on because I do want it to be anchored in the center of that. So that gives us that half of the map. You can see it's relatively quick to do all this work. For the other side, we're going to go ahead and likewise do shapes, and so this time we want to have more of a mountain. What I like to do is I like to have, there's a desert floor, but we want to have like a mountain floor for the walls, so get a slightly thicker or darker wall, and then we have this desert floor pattern, and that gives us a pretty good way of doing that. So if I do a line actually fills, but it doesn't close by default. So I can set this up as a line, and then we can kind of get 2 for the price of 1. We don't have to trace over it with the walls. I don't want to snap. I do want to snap that first point, but I don't want to snap the rest of the points. So here we just, the more points, the closer you're going to get to having, the fidelity to what the map is that you're tracing. It's just how much time do you have and how much effort do you want to put into it. But here we've got, a larger cavern to the side. And then we've got some natural stairs that are going to lead down. To this area with a little pool. And then there's some sort of a little shore on the other side with a couple of objects. Again, just to keep the maps interesting, Dyson throws in these little boxes, and it's up to you to kind of decide, hey, is that a chair? Is it a box? Is it a chest? Is it a table? What makes sense to you? Of course, from the lore that he writes, you might also get a feel for what he was thinking when he created it. Actually, let me pull that one back a little bit. So we're going to snap the points. We're going to change that bevel actually back to a round, so we get a more natural look. And because of the way that the drawing program does things, we're actually getting the wall being or the fill overlapping the wall area in a way. So it makes sense for us to try to make this a little bit thicker so that it's a little bit closer in size. I don't think that we need to totally double it, but it does give us a more accurate, closer to what was there originally. So I can then deselect this, and then I can say, hey, I've got this little, post in the middle there, or stalactite, stalagmite, whatever it might be. So I want to have the fill here be that mountain color thing, and then I want to turn off the snap, and I want to have this area that kind of fills in. So I've got that. Last 2 things to do, I think, are let's go ahead and do a water. So we're going to actually go to the colors, and we're going to go to something water-like, and then we're going to do this here. We'll make it like, again, the 7, or actually maybe 10. Go with the line. Well, yeah. Let's see how that's going to work out. So now I'm going to kind of try to match up with this wall roughly. coming across here. And then I'm matching up again with the wall that was there, as close as I relatively can. All right, so that gives us that, and then we just have these natural stairs to do. So we go back to stairs, and we want these natural ones. They're not too long, so I'm just going to do this, and I'm going to plop these down here, and then once they're down, select them, and then actually change it to place freely so they don't center exactly on a particular grid line or even point of one. So we get that, and that's our map. That's however long that was, 20 minutes to make this map relatively quickly. We can then set the opacity again, trace overlay, let's go with 100%, so you don't see it at all except for what we don't want to see, or rather, except for the, so you're only seeing the map area from Dyson that isn't part of the map area, the solid filled area, if you will. I can get rid of that by going to floor, and I can then say I want a, where is it, stone fill? Nope. All right, let me find it a different way. Fill. Yeah, okay, stone filled, and paint bucket it, and it's going to fill in the rest of the map here. So that's that, but I actually do want to make a point where these two merge together. So I can go into shapes here, and I can go to select, and I can say select this point and drag it over, and I can, we don't want to snap, and then drag this over here, and I can drag a couple more of these points around just to make it look a little bit more natural, cave-like. But this way here, we could then say, then push that down, I should say too. Push it down, and then we can throw in some rubble there. So we can go to features, and we've got some rubble, I think, and we can, put a little bit of this down to show, hey, that's where there was some sort of a cave-in that connected these two complexes. One might have been some goblin or kobold hangout cavern area, and then the other is some outpost by that some dwarves have, or some such along those lines. If I'm tweaking, there's lots of tweaking that you can do. I mean, if I'm trying to tweak, I tweak these stairs. Like this here looks a little bit too fat. Yeah, see, this one here is, I would lower this down so it's not, so it matches up with the walls a little bit. Back up. This one here needs to go and get a little bit bigger. But you get the idea. There's lots of tweaking that you can do, but that's a quick way to, what do we do? Like I said, 20 minutes really to create this whole map. So I hope that that's useful, just seeing me make a relatively simple map with Worldographer for Battlemat. And then you can go up here to File, and you would save it, and you can export it as an image or export it as a PDF if you prefer. That's always going to be based on the current size. So if you're trying to get the map to match up with, whatever, a Roll20 or some other program and what they do by default, size-wise, you can set that there and then export that as an image. All right, but before this goes any longer, let me wrap up there. Thanks a bunch for your support and attention, and I hope you're able to make some great maps with the tool.